know you're wondering why you have these lineman hats on and why you came in listening to, that was Starship from the 1980s, by the way. It's a song called We Built This City, because today and for the next few weeks, you guys are going to be given a challenge. We're going to do an engineering design challenge, a little STEM challenge, where we're going to tie in electricity with volume, so a science and a math standard. This was a 5th grade math unit centered around the volume standards, both volume and additive volume. It was kind of a project-based learning. The kids worked on building cities, which we used to represent different solid figures so that they can find the volumes of their different buildings. We also threw some science standards in there about electricity and circuits. You are going to pretend for the next couple of weeks that you are a newly elected mayor of a brand new city, which is really cool because usually when you've been elected a mayor, the city's already there. But you guys get to actually create and build your very own city. So this is what I need you to think about. We're gonna start today off with a journal entry, and you're gonna take a couple seconds and think about if you were given a brand new city that you got to build from the ground up. I want you to think of 5 to 7 different types of buildings that you need to have in your city. All right, let's share some of our ideas for some of the buildings that you guys want to have at your city. Ryan.
Factories.
Why factories?
It gives industry and jobs to new people in my city.
We need industry. That's an industry, and that would give jobs for the people in the city. That's great. And maybe because they offer a lot of different jobs in a factory, people would want to actually move into your city, which would help your tax base, right? Great idea. What else?
A police with a fire station.
Oh, that's good thinking. So you're kind of connecting or putting your emergency services together. Did anyone choose a Walmart? Reese, why did you choose Walmart?
Because you can buy clothes and drinks and food and furniture.
Great. She said you can get clothes, you can get furniture, you can get food, you can get all kinds of stuff at a Walmart, right? One place stop. So that's perfect. Okay. So what we're going to do is learn about volume. I had the kids start the unit by answering a journal question about becoming a mayor of a brand new city that they got to build from the ground up. And I did that because I wanted the kids to get excited about what was going to happen later in the unit so that I could get them working hard immediately from the start of the unit. A lot of times tying in that real world experience with the kids, it's just a very effective teaching method, and it makes things real. Okay, so in order to build our cities, we have to talk about volume, and we have to be able to understand what volume really is. But before we talk about that, let's go back in your brains, think 4th grade, 3rd grade, and there's a couple concepts I want to make sure that you have a solid understanding of before we move to volume. So who remembers what area is? Who remembers perimeter? All right, who wants to tell me what those words mean? Let's start with perimeter. If I need to find the perimeter of something, what am I talking about? Oli.
Outside of the square or shape.
Okay, perfect. Oli mentioned square or like a rectangle. What kind of figure is a square or a rectangle? How many dimensions do those shapes have? Yes. Go ahead, Braid. 2 or 3 dimensions on a square or a rectangle. Another idea? You're getting it confused with cube, and that's okay. Yes? 2-dimensional. They have length and they have width. Do you agree with that? Okay. So if you need to find the area, what did you say? The area around something, a 2D figure like a square rectangle, we would use perimeter. Who can think of an example where we might need to use perimeter? Yes, Kathy.
You may need to use perimeter when you measure the sides of a fence or something, like.
If we wanted to build a fence?
Yeah.
Okay. So after we measured those sides, what would we do to find the perimeter?
You'd add the sides to get it.
Okay, perfect. Let's say we go and we get a class dog. And we're going to keep the class dog outside because there is no way Dr. J is going to let us keep it in the building. So we're going to go over by the playground and we're going to measure off a large enough space for our dog to run and play. So we would need to measure the outside of that giant rectangle that's going to be our dog fence. That would be perimeter. Do you remember that? All right, let's talk about area. What's the area of something? So Pyro?
The area, say, like you built the fence around it, the area is just like the grass inside of the fence.
Okay. Other ideas? Other thoughts? Yes, Alex?
Area is the space inside of an object.
Yeah, the stuff inside, just like what you said. And what you said, that's perfect. So area is going to be the amount of space inside that two-dimensional figure, right? Inside that square or inside that rectangle. Okay? And so those we keep saying two-dimensional because they have, why am I calling those things two-dimensional? Yes?
Because they're flat.
Because they're flat. They have 2 dimensions. They have what? What do they have? Owen?
They have length and width.
They have length and they have width, okay? Now when we're talking about volume, we're going to bring a third dimension into our figures. These are going to have length, width, and what else? Everybody. Height, right? That's where 3D comes from. 3 different directions, length, width, and height. All right, so let's look up here. What does 3D mean? Raise your hands. Let's write up here what we just said. And remember, as I'm writing things on the board, you're writing them in your interactive math notebooks, right? So follow along. Yes?
3D means 3-dimensional.
Okay, so it has 3 dimensions. And what are those dimensions? Jesse, what are those dimensions, hon?
Length times width times height.
We have length, we have width, and we have height. So here's our length, our width, and our height. Do me a favor, and in your math notebook, I want you to sketch just a quick little 3-dimensional cube, and I want you to label the length, the width, and the height on that cube. All right, eyes on me. Take a look at this. We're going to pretend this is a flat figure. How can I find the area of this rectangle? Claire?
By the length and width.
By the length and the width. What am I going to do with the length and the width?
Multiply them.
We multiply them. Now remember, with perimeter, what do we use? What operation?
Addition.
We add with perimeter. Perfect. We add with perimeter. But with area, we multiply, right? Make that note. So I need to find the area of this. Now someone remind me again what area is. Harrison?
The space inside of it.
Inside. Okay. How would I find the area of this?
You would find the area by multiplying the 4 going that way,
The 4. Okay, my length.
the length, and the width of the 2 going that way.
Okay.
Equal 4 times 2 equals 8.
Okay.
That would be 8 cubic units.
Cubic units, how many? Square units. Perfect, because I'm only multiplying the 2 things, the length times the width. I originally started with perimeter because that leads into area, and then area is a lead into volume. So once I knew that the kids understood what area was, I wanted them to see volume as layers of area, almost stacked one on top of the other, giving that base height so that they could mentally picture what was going on. When I say the word volume, or when we're talking about the concept volume, I want a picture in their heads, which is to pop up, which is why we use those manipulatives and those unit cubes in order to teach it. So these are 2D figures. All right, now let's think about volume. Volume can be thought of as if you have area, this is your base, your bottom. You have area and you have layers upon layers upon layers upon layers. Okay, I'm going to pass out some of the unit cubes to you guys, and I'm going to have you do a couple things with them. So just leave them at your desk for right now, and then I'm going to give you directions. Who can tell me what this is? What shape do I have here? Harrison.
A cube.
This is a cube. How many dimensions does this cube have? Joey.
3.
3. What are they?
Their length
There's length,
and height.
width, and height. All right, I'm going to throw another vocabulary word at you. Are you ready? The word base. What's the base of this figure? Reese.
The length and the width.
The length and the width. Can you point to the base for me? Yeah, it's this bottom part, right? This part that we could actually, like Reese said, it has length and width. We could actually find the area of this base, couldn't we? Oli, how would I find the area of this base?
Length times width.
Length times width. Count it with me. Ready? Oli, ready? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times 1, 2. What would the area of this base be, Oli?
25.
25 what, Oli?
25 centimeters.
Well, units. Would it be cubed or would it be squared? Because we're multiplying two things, length times width. Everyone, what would it be? Squared. Good. So Oli, 25 units squared, okay? We're going to build some cubes because the difference is we've only talked about area so far where you've just had a base of something, but we're going to add that third dimension and build it up. So you guys have cubes at your tables. I want you to grab some cubes and I want you to build what I built. Because we need to learn, we're going to learn how to figure out how many little unit cubes are in these three-dimensional shapes that we're making. All right, do I have your attention? Eyes on me. Let's start out with a base of 4. So just give me a base of 4. And we just learned that base is our length times our width. The area of this base would be 4 cubes squared. Okay, now give me another layer. Add another layer to your base. Good job. Good job. And then hold it up so I know that you're ready. Good job, you guys. Hold them up when you're ready. Okay, so suddenly that first base layer that we had has taken on another dimension. Now it has what? What does it have? We've added some what? Yes.
Volume.
Some volume because we've added a third dimension, which is what?
Height.
Height, right? All right, so what would the volume, if you think of volume as being kind of like layers of area, what would the volume of this be? How many have we used here? Mads, how many have we used? What would the volume be here? How many unit cubes do we have?
We have 4.
We have 4 for our base, and now we've added another layer. So now we have what?
8.
We have a total of 8. So the volume of this would be 8 units. Would that be squared or would that be cubed? I remember that when we're talking about area, it's length times width, so we square it. What do you think we're going to do here? We've added another layer, another dimension. Is this going to be squared? What do you think?
I think it's going to be cubed.
You think it's going to be cubed. How many of you agree with him? Okay, well, we're going to see. Now I want you to add another layer on top. Add another layer. Now this time, when you finish adding this third layer, I want you to sketch it in your math notebook. Discovery lessons are important, but you have to be careful in planning them. You have to kind of guide your students a little bit so that they can get to the point where you need them to be in order to discover whatever standard or whatever idea it is that you're working towards. So a lot of times with discovery lessons, kids have to be guided with appropriate questioning, and that might even depend, where each individual kid is at that time in their own learning. So it's very student-centered, but yet the teacher has to play a very active role because your questioning is what ends up getting the child to where you need them to go. How are we doing over here? All right, Reese, show me what you have.
I built this figure
Okay.
and I measured it.
You have, how many layers do you have on this figure?
3.
It's 3. Okay, so you added an additional layer. And what's your base? What's
4
4 what? 4 units.
squares.
It's 4 units squared, right? And now look what you've done. You've taken that 4 units squared, and then you've added additional layers. This one's worth how many? This layer. You have 4 here, and you have 4 here. So 4 plus 4 plus 4. We have a total of how many cubes here? 12. Okay. So, Alex, let me see your cube. You did the same thing. Let's put another layer on top of yours. Okay, so now we have added an additional layer. And this is what I want your group to figure out. Rather than taking all these apart and counting all these cubes to figure out what it takes to fill it up, in order to find the volume, I want you to figure out if you can find a shortcut to trying to figure out what the volume is here, okay? See if you can find a shortcut to that. And I'm going to come back in a few minutes, okay?
It's very much an inquiry-based approach that we have here at Clark Creek, and Ms. McIntosh really embodies that. She's able, through her number talks, or ways in which she asks her questions, to help kids discover and understand number sense at very high levels. It makes it more rigorous for the students when they have to think for themselves and follow the inquiry process.
Let's talk about what we've just discovered or what we've just figured out. Each one of these individually is called a what? A cube, a unit cube, right? And so we started making three-dimensional shapes, and we were talking about finding the volume of them, and we could count the unit cubes inside those figures, right? And that would give us the volume. But I stopped and talked to these two tables because, in this unit we're going to build cities, right? So we're talking about, we're going to use some rather large boxes. And it would be super time consuming to go ahead if we had to dump all these unit cubes inside all these boxes and then dump them back out and count them up to try to figure out the volume of the box, or how much those 3D figures actually hold inside, what it takes to fill them up, because that's what volume's all about. So I asked them to take what they already know about finding the area of a base of something, the bottom, the area of the base. They already know a formula for that, which is what? Who can tell me what that is? Tell me, how do I find the area of this bottom, this base? Yeah, length times width, right? So if we take that knowledge we already know, and then in order to create a 3D figure, we're just adding more layers on top of it. If they could come up with a formula to make that math faster for us, so we don't have to fill everything with unit cubes. And what did you guys come up with? Share with us your ideas.
Base times height.
I'm sorry?
Base
times height. And Soph's right. One of our formulas, and I want you to write this down in your notebook, one of the formulas we have for finding volume is base times height. I'm going to give you a second to write that down. And so if you'll remind me, because we're using base times height here, what is base again? Length times width, okay? So who can give me another formula? You guys came up with something a little bit different.
Oh, we came up with length times width times height.
Okay, which is another formula for finding volume, length times width times height, where you can take the length of a 3D figure times the width, multiply it by the height, which represents your layers, and you can find the volume that way. The first station that the kids worked at, we were working on volume, and this is about midway through the unit, where they've already had a lot of concrete examples and they've learned the abstract formulas, but I wanted them to make sure that they were able to measure and calculate their volume appropriately. So I worked with them in a smaller setting so I could get a closer eye on that. And the kids used rulers and they found the measurements, the length, the width, the height of their boxes. And then they were able to calculate volume through that. And you'll see on the video with one of the groups, I was able to go into additive volume because I felt like they were ready at that point. All right, what'd you come up with?
For this box, we got 96 inches cubed.
96 inches cubed. What'd you guys come up with?
4 inches cubed.
Okay, well, I want you to think about this. Most buildings that we see, and this is gonna come in handy when we're building. All right, let's take a look at this. A lot of times if you've looked at hospitals, so listen to me please, if you've looked at hospitals while you're driving, or if you're driving down downtown Atlanta, there's lots and lots of tall buildings, but they're not just all perfect rectangular prisms, or they're not just like perfect cubes. A lot of times you have buildings, especially larger buildings, that are kind of attached to one another. They might look like this, or maybe like this. So what are we gonna do then? When you have, let's say we have, in this case, we have 2 rectangular prisms, and we're gonna need to find the total volume of these 2 shapes. How are we going to figure that out? Because we don't have a perfect length, width, and height here when they're together.
You measure them separately and then add them together.
Okay, so if I looked at these like two separate rectangular prisms, I can add those totals together, and that's going to give me the, do you know what that's called?
Additive.
The additive volume. See that word add in there, the additive volume. So you guys each found the volume of these two rectangular prisms. Tell me, I want you to work together and find the additive volume. So what are you going to, you're going to take each of the volumes and do what?
Add them together.
Add them up. Good.
Cheers.
24 times 96.
24, 29.
24.
Now I'm hearing numbers like 24 and 96. I know those are the volumes that you found, but how do we label those? 24 what?
Inches.
Inches what?
Cubed.
Cubed. Let's make sure we're using that vocabulary every time we say the numbers. And let me know when you found the additive volume.
I found it. I got 120 inches cubed.
What'd you get, Soph?
120 inches cubed.
Bree, same thing? Good, 120 inches cubed. The students who were seated working on laptops, those were websites that I had linked to my class website, that a couple of them let the kids work at their own pace. So it started out with more simple volume questions, and then as the students got things correct, the level increased, the rigor. Whereas if they were having difficulty, they may, start off with some easier problems. The kids that were working with cubes, I just had some different size cubes and some different size rectangular prisms at the table. They were cutting those nets and they were manipulating them into three-dimensional solid figures, and then they were finding the volume of those figures. What I like about using the nets is it's still, it's not really as concrete as the individual unit cubes, but yet there's a grid on them, so that helps them and kind of leads them through. It's kind of a way to scaffold, some lessons. Those grids will help, this kids can easily count, the grid lines across to find the length, the width, and the height. And then it gives them an idea of what a 3D figure looks like when it lies flat. The problem-solving group, they were working on a multitude of different types of problems that all dealt with volume. On some of the problems, they were given the volume and they had to work backwards to try to find side lengths or length, width, and height. On other problems, they were given lengths and widths and heights, and they had to find the volume. Okay, so you guys are working on some problem-solving activities. Let's take a look at number 2. It says a cube has a side length of 8 centimeters. What would the volume be? I'm kind of confused here because I thought that it was length times width times height, and if they only give me one measurement, how in the world am I supposed to figure out the volume here? I need some help.
Because a cube, all of its sides are the same length, so all you would do
Okay.
you would add your 3 dimensions. So down here, your length would be 8, your width is 8, and your height is 8. You multiply these two together, which should get you 64, and then you multiply these, and that's your answer.
Okay, so a cube is made up of what two-dimensional shape? Squares. Oh, squares. So you're telling me then that I can find the volume of a cube where I only know one side length. Because it's a square, all the sides are going to be equal, right? Okay, good. You guys figured that out. That's perfect. So in order to build our cities, we first discussed what was going to be important to have in our city. Then we learned our formulas for finding volume. And then the kids actually used nets to create a replica of what their building was going to be. So if they were doing the mall, if they were in charge of building the mall, they used nets to create a small mall. The kids got together in their groups and they found the volume of their boxes. They found the additive volume of all the buildings, that they were working on. How are we doing over here? We good? Are you working on finding the volume of these individual boxes, and then you're gonna add them together for your additive? And that's what you guys are doing also. Remember to label them V1, V2, V3, because remember we're gonna do V1 plus V2 plus V3 plus V4. And then once all that was finished, we threw some science in there, and the kids began building circuits. I had a lesson on circuits, and they wired their own circuits. and we troubleshooted where we needed to. They put their circuits in their boxes, and so now all their buildings light up. All right, so Amelia, is your circuit just dim?
Yes.
All right, so make sure that box doesn't fall off. Let's troubleshoot. We have a dim circuit. What could that mean?
It could mean that the battery is either low or there's a weak connection.
Low battery, weak connection.
Too many lights connected.
Too many lights. Let's talk about what Pyro said, because that's a large strand. So if we think of electrical currents, and when we create a circuit, a complete circuit, all the electricity is flowing through that wire. All right. Think about when let's say we're going to eat a big steak. Steak gives you lots of energy, right? If I eat a big old steak, I'm going to have a lot of energy. But if I have to share that steak with all of you guys at the table, my portion is going to get smaller, causing me not to get as much energy, right? Kind of like, think of it as electrical circuit. How can we connect that?
So, basically what you're saying is, what are all the lights and the steak is the battery?
Yeah, exactly. So if you're all, it's no different when you have the same amount of electricity flowing through. If you guys are all lights pulling on that electricity, needing that electricity light,
We're not getting as much energy as, say we put 3 on one light.
Right.
They'll be getting more energy, than if we put like 5.
Jennifer is able to take learning to very, very high levels of rigor, because I think she does some key things right in her classroom. One of the things that she does very, very well is she assesses the kids. She knows her students. That's critically important to student success, is knowing where her kids are. And the next thing I think she does really, really well is planning. She plans for that instruction. By knowing her kids, knowing what level they are on, she's able to differentiate, and she just is able to teach as a logical response to the needs of the learner.
Okay, so we're going to wrap the unit up today. You guys have learned how to find volume a bunch of different ways. We've played with or manipulated a lot of cubes, a lot of rectangular prisms, talked about the different formulas. You've built amazing cities. We have used science to integrate into our unit, and we've built circuits, complete circuits, so you guys can make your lights go on in your building. So what I want to do right now is kind of take a look and go back in our math journals. When we first started this unit, we were talking about how can we find the volume of a three-dimensional figure. I want to go back and I want to reflect on that. I want to take a few minutes and answer that question inside your math journals. So go ahead and open up your math journals, please. And this is the question I want you to think about and then write about. Ready? All right. How can I calculate the volume of three-dimensional figures in multiple ways? So I want you to tell me more than one way. And I also want you to tell me more than one formula. Okay? Do that right now. Respond to that question in your journals. I want complete sentences, capital letters, correct punctuation. You know the deal. The interactive math journals that the kids have, it's probably the most important, I would say, tool we have in the classroom. It's kind of our focus. All of their notes, everything goes in these journals. I don't use a textbook. So I like the journals because it helps to keep the kids organized. Every day they start off with either, like a target statement or an essential question. And the kids come in every day and they write that question down. And then all of our examples or any vocabulary and things that we talk about all goes into those notebooks. And so when they, are finished at the end of the day or at the end of that lesson, maybe it takes 1 or 2 days, they're able to turn back around and use those examples and everything that we've talked about and answer that one essential question. All right, go ahead and put your pencils down, please. Even if you're not finished, we're going to talk about it for a few minutes. All right, give me some ideas. Our question was, and this is what we started with weeks ago, how in the world can I find the volume of an object, right? We've talked about some different methods. I want to hear what you came up with. Yes? Base times height is one of the formulas we can use. We talked about a couple different formulas. Yes, what else? You're all right. I'm sorry, say it again.
Height times width times length.
Length times width times height. All right, I'm going to trick you here. I'm going to try to trick you. I want to know the difference between volume and finding area. What's the difference? Who can explain that to me? Because you need to have a solid understanding of that. Alexa.
The difference between area and volume is area is the inside of a 2D shape and volume is the inside of a 3D shape.
Oh, you are so smart. When you're talking about abstract concepts like formulas and things like that for 10 and 11-year-olds, like that's tough for them to wrap their brain around. Sure, they can all put the numbers in there and they can do the math, but they don't truly understand what's going on. And I kind of feel, with elementary school, this is their kind of the last time to really build that solid foundation for math for them. And they need to understand why things work the way they do so that they can connect other areas of math.